Well, I hope everyone has enjoyed the dinner and the dinner conversation. Would like to begin our program by acknowledging the donors to the TAMEST Endowment and the O'Donnell Awards Endowment who really make all of this possible. Their vision and their generosity in supporting that vision have been fundamental to the success of TAMEST and to the careers of the young investigators who have been O'Donnell Award recipients. I would like now to introduce some special guests, beginning with our TAMEST past presidents who are here, and would they raise their hand as I call their name? Tom Caskey from Baylor College of Medicine. Tom. Donald Paul from the University of Texas at Austin. Dan Foster from UT Southwestern. David Daniel, UT Dallas. Tinsley Oden, University of Texas at Austin. And Steve Holditch, Texas A&M University. And not quite a past president, I think, but Bill Brinkley, our president for this meeting. We also have a number of members of the Industry and Affiliates Committee who are great supporters and encourage our efforts in TAMEST, and I'd like to recognize them. Ernie Cockrell from Cockrell Interests. Sarah Ortwine, ExxonMobil Upstream Research Company. And Peter O'Donnell from the O'Donnell Foundation. I'm pleased to see a number of my colleague presidents from the UT system, and I'd like to acknowledge them here today. Dr. David Callender from UTMB, Bill Powers from UT Austin, and again, David Daniel from UT Dallas. And among our special guests are our Nobel laureates, Hans Deisenhofer, Bruce Beutler, and Bob Curl. Before I turn the podium over to Bob to lead us through the awards, I do want to make a few comments about the O'Donnell Awards program and about Edith and Peter. These awards have been given annually since 2006, and they recognize the rising stars of science in Texas. Texas researchers whose work meet the highest standards of exemplary professional performance, creativity, and resourcefulness. As you will appreciate, awards are given in 4 categories: medicine, engineering, science, and technology innovation, and each carries a $25,000 honorarium and an invitation to present at the TAMEST annual meeting, and certainly we've all been enriched by some outstanding presentations in this afternoon's program. These are made possible through both the generosity and the vision of Edith and Peter O'Donnell, and time really doesn't permit, if we're going to get to the dessert reception, for me to do full justice to all the ways in which Edith and Peter have impacted the life of Texas and certainly the Dallas over decades. But I want to take a few moments to acknowledge some highlights of that legacy, many of which have been enabled through the O'Donnell Foundation, which was established in 1957 to actualize their belief that America's future rested on an educated public. And since that time, they have made truly extraordinary contributions with extraordinary impact in initiatives in education, K through 12, and in higher education. Their tireless pursuit of excellence in STEM education led to the establishment of the advanced placement strategies and laying the foundation programs currently being scaled nationally by the National Math and Science Initiatives, and we'll be hearing tomorrow in closing our meeting from Tom Luce about these extraordinary efforts. Their commitment to excellence extended to arts education as well. They initiated the AP Arts Incentive Program in 1994 and founded the AP Music Theory Incentive Program in 1998. Their extensive contributions to higher education have resulted in endowed professorships and graduate fellowships in research-intensive fields such as computer science, engineering, and biology. In their determination to strengthen the research enterprise in Texas public universities, beginning in 1983 with a challenge grant, they have endowed 32 chairs in science and engineering at UT Austin alone. 7 are now held by members of the National Academy of Sciences and 5 by members of the National Academy of Engineering. And I have come to know of the enormous importance of the silver bullet conceived by Peter O'Donnell for recruiting the very best, many of them in this room, to our Texas institutions. The O'Donnells have been instrumental in our campus in the recruitment and retention of every one of our 5 Nobel laureates and many of our leading faculty. They established the Endowed Scholars Program to help UT Southwestern recruit young faculty and provided the initial funding to build our electronic medical record. The Endowed Scholars Program's impact, I think, was manifest in our program today and reflected in some of the award recipients. And this is an impact at UT Southwestern which has been echoed by impact at UT Austin, at UT Dallas, and many other institutions across the state. For 25 years, they have been the inspiration for innovative centers of research in key areas impacting our society, like our Center for Human Nutrition, and more recently, elevating our Green Center for Systems Biology. Coming to our program this evening, they have been supporters of TAMEST since its inception, and thinking about the remarks made by Senator Hutchinson last night about the very origins of TAMEST, it all starting there in the offices of the O'Donnell Foundation. We realize that Peter has another role, a midwife to important organizations such as the TAMEST organization. They realized what Peter has often said, quote, "We can never do enough to recognize and reward outstanding talent," and that's the impetus of the awards which will be given tonight. As citizens of Dallas, Edith and Peter, I just want to point out, have not limited their attentions to science and technology and engineering, but also to the entire quality of the civic life through their support of the arts and through beautification of the city. Their commitment to education and research has been unparalleled and often done with the highest order of altruism through anonymity. And yet, today we have the chance to recognize one of the few instances where they have allowed their name to be lent to one of their good works in the O'Donnell Awards. I can say finally on a personal note that from the time I arrived here a little more than 4 years ago, Peter was a person I knew I could always turn to for wisdom and advice on the most challenging of problems. Sometimes I've learned I don't even have to ask, Peter. Before now turning to the O'Donnell Award presentations, I do also want to acknowledge the many other contributors who so generously have also supported the O'Donnell Endowment to make all of these awards possible. And there are many in this room who can attest to the impact on their career, and I do want to now take a moment to recognize some of our past recipients of the O'Donnell Awards who are with us this evening, beginning with Dr. David Mangelsdorf, a TAMEST member and 2007 O'Donnell Award winner. David, where are you? David, right there. J.C. Chow, recipient of the 2011 O'Donnell Award in Engineering. Kim Orth, recipient of the 2000 O'Donnell Award in Science. And Phil Scherer, recipient of the 2012 O'Donnell Award in Medicine. And now I would like to introduce Dr. Robert Curl, who will preside over tonight's award presentation ceremony. Dr. Curl shared the Nobel Prize in Chemistry in 1996 with TAMEST founding co-chair Dr. Richard Smalley and Sir Harold Kroto for their 1985 discovery of the buckyball. He is currently an emeritus professor of chemistry at Rice and has served on TAMEST's first board of directors. He currently serves as a member of the O'Donnell Award Selection Committee. On behalf of everyone here this evening, I thank you, Dr. Curl, and fellow committee members for their dedicated work in selecting this year's awardees.
So it's my pleasure tonight to sort of present awards to the 2013 O'Donnell Award winners. I have to begin by thanking the O'Donnells, Edith and Peter O'Donnell, for the vision of creating these awards. The TAMEST organization, in terms of its membership, is largely a bunch of old fogies like me. And the important thing for Texas is to think about the future and who is going to pick up the mantle of carrying forward scientific and engineering research in the state. And so the O'Donnell Awards are a way of encouraging young people, recognizing their talents, and encouraging them, spurring them on to go to greater and greater things. Let me tell you a little bit about the selection process. As you know, there are the 4 awards. 3 of them are essentially for academics, the awards in science, engineering, and medicine. And the 4th award, which is more recent, on technological innovation, is primarily aimed at recognizing the innovators in Texas industry. So the Innovation Award is handled a little bit differently, and I'll get back to that. For the 3 original awards, the first criterion was that to be eligible for this award, you had to be within 15 years of your first appointment as an independent investigator. That is, where you had control of what sort of research you were going to be doing. The way the process works for selection goes as follows. Obviously there's an O'Donnell Awards Committee. This is broken into the 4 subcommittees for each of the 4 awards. The staff at TAMEST works very hard to bring in nominations for the awards so that we have a reasonably large group of people to consider. These nominations are due by April 30th, and if you know of someone you think, excuse me, who would be a strong candidate for receiving an O'Donnell Award, for heaven's sakes, nominate them before April 30th. The people who can nominate are members of the TAMEST organization and the senior administrators at the various universities and the senior administrators in the industrial situation. So April 30th, these come in. Each of the subcommittees, which usually is 3 members each, goes through the nominations and tries to, each individual, we try to rank order them, and then we have a phone meeting and argue about what the rank ordering should be, and ultimately choose about 3 individuals for serious consideration. At that point, we contact people outside of the state of Texas. I'm talking about the 3 older awards. We do contact people outside of the state of Texas who we think are in a position to evaluate the accomplishments of the awardees and ask them, if possible, to rank order the 3 individuals typically that we send them. And sometime in July, these come back, we examine what the outside referees or reviewers have to say. Ultimately, the three subcommittees comes up with a recommendation for the awardee, which is then put before the full committee. We talk about it for a while. Finally, the full committee has its own choice of awardees. That goes to the Nobel Committee, which I don't get 2 bites on because apparently somebody realized that wasn't fair. And then ultimately the board ratifies the ultimate choice. So it's a fairly detailed process. Let me tell you about a couple of peculiarities. One is that the science award alternates between the biological sciences and the physical sciences. So this year the award goes into the biological sciences. The 2014 award will go to someone in the physical sciences, although someone in the biological sciences, if they were really, really good, could steal it from the physical science people. The award for technological innovation is handled quite a bit differently. The ground rule, the reason for this is, first of all, in the industrial setting, there's a lot of team activity, and so it's much harder sometimes it's much harder to pick out one single individual. So the rule is that the person has to be age 52 or younger and has made somebody on the team, if it's a team thing, has to be age 52 or younger, and they have to have made a major contribution to the work that's the award is going for. And the technological innovation essentially is, let's put important things into practice in an economic sense, an innovative way. So that's sort of the picture of how this is done, and I'm sorry to spend so much time on it, but I feel that it's important that people know about this, and in particular that members of this organization nominate candidates for the O'Donnell Awards. So with that, I believe we have a video. I think that's the next thing on the agenda. So are we ready with the video about the awardees?
Their research has led them to the pinnacle of their fields, and they have the potential to transform our world. They are inventors, risk-takers, leaders. And tonight, the Academy of Medicine, Engineering, and Science of Texas honors these 4 innovators with the 2013 Edith and Peter O'Donnell Awards. Laura Hooper, Medicine. In her lab at UT Southwestern Medical Center, Dr. Laura Hooper is working to solve the mysteries of how our immune system copes with a staggering number of bacteria, more than 300 trillion that live in the human gut.
They do pose a threat. So these are bacteria. They have their own agenda, and they're in very close contact with the intestinal lining.
Laura's work focuses on identifying which proteins are doing the heavy lifting to protect the body from bacteria.
What sorts of proteins are made by the intestinal lining that might be important for keeping these bacteria from crossing into our tissues and causing disease? And so that led us to the discovery of a major group of proteins.
Within this group, Laura's team identified a protein called Reg3 gamma. Laura's research has shown that Reg3 gamma acts like a bodyguard, killing any bacteria that gets too close to human tissues.
We need our intestinal bacteria for our metabolic health, but again, like I said, they have their own agenda. So the trick is to dictate how close they can actually come to our tissues, and that's where Reg3 gamma comes in. It basically defines what we in my lab like to call the demilitarized zone in the gut.
When bacteria are able to cross this zone, problems ensue, like inflammatory bowel disease, which affects more than 1.5 million people in the U.S.
What Laura's been studying is very appropriate or very important to our understanding of how those diseases develop. And I think that Laura's research is clearly contributing to our understanding of what the normal processes are by which we regulate our commensal bacteria.
So how did the purification go?
Actually, I got a very good yield. So
Laura feels she's barely scratching the surface. Her goal is to find the next Reg 3, another super protein that provides a stronger defense against disease.
One of the big pushes in my lab is to continue to try to discover new antibacterial proteins made by the lining, and we think it's going to be a particularly rich source of protein antibiotics that are not prone to have bacteria develop resistance.
Laura has established herself as a thought leader in her field. She's been named a Howard Hughes Investigator, an honor given to the top biomedical scientists in the country.
I can't say enough good about UT Southwestern. The quality of the science here is just outstanding, and I think it helps us all to raise our game.
Li Shi, engineering. We look at today's technology and wonder, what could be next? When will efficiencies of size and speed reach a limit? Dr. Li Shi is on the forefront of finding answers to these questions, and his research in nanotechnology could have even broader implications, from transportation to treatments for cancer.
This is the temperature of what?
He's trying to advance how one is able to look at materials on the nanoscale and how the properties change, and if so, how can we use those changed properties in order to make something that's useful.
At his lab at the University of Texas at Austin, much of Li's work has focused on the heat generated by computer chips. Heat is a major barrier limiting the efficiencies of electronic and other devices, and Li may have found a material that can help. A thin layer of graphite called graphene.
Graphene has high conductivity. We only need to add a very small amount of graphene into the phase change materials. That's sufficient for us to extract the heat.
Li's findings suggest that electronic devices made with graphene will move heat away from hotspots more efficiently than copper or silicone. The result could mean smaller, more efficient devices that can handle more computing power. Li's lab is also working on a joint project to create thermal energy storage devices that would provide cabin heating and cooling for electric vehicles without draining the electric batteries. In addition, his team has been working on a semiconductor device for generating electric power from heat contained in the engine exhaust of a gasoline-powered vehicle.
If you can somehow utilize the thermoelectric device to convert even just 10% of the waste heat, you can use that to power the AC, for example, in the car.
And in the field of healthcare, Li is partnering with biomedical researchers to use nanomaterials in the area of drug delivery.
We want to use that technology to control the size and shape of those nanoparticles so that there's a higher chance the cancer cells will eat them. So then it can help to kill just the cancer cells.
Despite Li's far-reaching research, ultimately his work comes down to one thing: teaching.
I think that's the most enjoyable part of the research, is actually being a teacher, scholar, doing things that can one day probably change the world.
Yujing Zhang, science. How we think, walk, and run is all tied into the precise movement of proteins across cell membranes. At UT Southwestern Medical Center, Dr. Yujing Zhang is working to solve the mystery of how these specific protein movements, called protein transports, impact the body and their role in disease.
Did you get crystals?
Yes, I'm going to show you later.
Okay, big, nice one.
Using X-ray crystallography, Yujing's team is able to study what protein pathways look like under varying circumstances.
So how about the other crystal form?
These three-dimensional crystal images allow Yujing and his students to identify disruptions or imbalances in protein transport, which can result in abnormalities like heart arrhythmia. Yujing believes the more we know about these movements, the more likely scientists can develop treatments to fight these disorders.
Once you know the fundamental properties of a protein, it will help when you move on to more sort of practical questions.
to correct, say, an arrhythmia, a cardiologist will prescribe a medication that affects the movement of calcium ions in or out of the heart cell, and the way that those calcium ions get in and out of the cell is in part through the proteins and the class of proteins that Dr. Zhang studies.
One of Yu Jing's most notable breakthroughs is in his research of a protein labeled the big potassium channel, a potential target for drugs that could treat stroke symptoms and movement disorders like multiple sclerosis.
Eventually, we're going to slowly moving towards more sort of medical relevant proteins, like human channel proteins. Once we have that, we can use so-called structure-based drug design to find the blocker or some modulator to changing the function of the protein. It's our eventual goal.
Yu Jing credits the impact of his mentors for enabling his success, including Nobel Prize winner Rod McKinnon. Now, as his work gains wider relevance in a whole range of disciplines, Yu Jing has become the one making the impact.
His work is not only of interest to the protein biochemist or to the electrophysiologist, but also it has great practical applications. It ranges from cardiology to neurology to disorders that affect movement. All target these class of proteins that he works on.
Tim Nedwed, Technology Innovation.
And I'm going to test it against our new dispersant.
For more than a decade, Tim Nedwed has been working on innovative solutions for treating oil spills. The leader of ExxonMobil upstream research company's oil spill response program was ready when a potential disaster struck in the Gulf of Mexico.
Tonight, there's a state of emergency in effect in the state of Louisiana.
The Deepwater Horizon spill gushed from the seafloor for 3 months and may have released between 20 to 50,000 barrels of crude oil a day into the Gulf.
It just makes sense, rather than letting the oil come up to the surface and having to find it and inefficiently treat it with dispersants. If you're going to use dispersants, put it at the source exactly where you know the oil is.
Tim's research suggested that injecting dispersants into the spill's source rather than on the surface would break the oil into small droplets that would biodegrade in the water column to keep oil from reaching the surface and fragile Gulf Coast shorelines.
Knowing the guys that were on the ground waiting for that oil to come in and telling me that, gosh, we just aren't seeing the oil, that's when I knew, and that was a few weeks into the spill. We did something important.
This new approach is not only credited for lessening the amount of oil that reached the shore, but also limiting the amount of potentially harmful vapors that reached response workers on the surface.
He took his years of experience in research, and in a time of very high pressure, he came up with a solution that impacted a lot of people in a very significant way.
Now, as a result of Tim's efforts, the equipment needed for subsea dispersant injection is being installed in oil-producing regions around the world. Tim's next challenge? Developing new ways to treat oil spills in the freezing waters of the Arctic, which includes, among other ideas, a concept for controlled burning of oil using herding agents to thicken slicks without booms. This allows igniting and burning oil from helicopters instead of boats. The speed of a helicopter-deployed response option could fundamentally change industry's approach to oil spill response in all areas and not just the Arctic.
We try to do things to make our ability to respond to oil spills better. But our hope is to never use them.
Congratulations to the 2013 recipients of the Edith and Peter O'Donnell Awards.
Would the individuals who are going to introduce the award recipients come to the stage, please? So we're going to start with the award for medicine. Edward Wakeland is going to make the introduction.
Thank you.
It's a privilege to introduce Laura Hooper as the recipient of the 2013 Edith and Peter O'Donnell Award in Medicine. We've already heard about the scientific contributions that she's made and their stellar nature, and I'd like to just briefly mention some of the other things that Laura has done within our academic community that have strongly impacted the success of not only her laboratory but also our entire program. So really there are two things that a academic scientist needs to be able to achieve while they're on the faculty of a research-intense university such as UT Southwestern. One is to, of course, do stellar research and make major contributions. And the second really is to train the future scientists that will really populate our laboratories in the future. And Laura has been a major contributor in that area as well. From the beginning of her tenure at UT Southwestern, she has trained literally a herd of students and postdocs, all of whom have done quite well and are going on now to really nice careers in many instances throughout the universities of our country. And more recently, she's been the director of the graduate program in immunology, which has really done quite well under her stewardship. And through her efforts and like-minded scientists and faculty at UT Southwestern, that program has risen to be in the top 10 in the country. So from my view, really, Laura is the consummate academic scientist. She's an outstanding leader in her laboratory, in our university community, and within the broader national and international community of biomedical scientists. So Laura, if you'd come forward to receive your award.
Maybe we should come out here, so not towards the
So this is an incredible honor for me, and there are, of course, many people that I need to thank. First and foremost, Peter and Edith O'Donnell for endowing this award and supporting it. I think that this is a major contribution to recognizing the role of science in Texas. I also, of course, want to thank my chairman, Ward Wakeland, who just introduced me, for his continuous support during my time on the faculty at UT Southwestern. He has been supportive throughout in many different ways. And finally, I wouldn't be here without the excellent hard work and insight of the people that have worked in my lab over the last 9 years or so. I've had the privilege to train some really excellent students and postdocs, and they have been, they are as much a recipient of this award as I am. And finally, I want to thank all of the colleagues at UT Southwestern for their wonderful collaborations and scientific interactions. And it's just a tremendously fun and rigorous place to work, and I think it has really helped me to, as I said in the video, raise my game. So thank you all.
So the next presenter is well known, William Powers, University of Texas.
Thank you. Well, it is my great honor to be here to introduce the recipient of this year's award, O'Donnell Award in Engineering. But let me say that there are award winners tonight, but looking out over this audience, it is a great honor and great pleasure for me to be part of TAMEST proceedings in any capacity, and certainly in these awards. Looking out over this audience, I want to congratulate all of you in this room tonight. You are the scientific leaders of our state, not just our state, but our country and the world. And everyone in Texas is very proud of you and the work you do. And to Senator Hutchison and Peter and Edith O'Donnell, let me give you special thanks and congratulations for your vision and your energy, your philanthropy, your steadfastness on TAMEST and these awards, and especially the philanthropy and giving these awards. We are here tonight because of you, and I want to thank you for that as well. It is, and it is my honor to introduce the winner of this year's O'Donnell Award in Engineering, Dr. Li Shi. Dr. Shi was nominated for this award by Dr. John Goodenough, another double member of this academy. So proud that he's a member of our faculty at the University of Texas at Austin. He wasn't able to be with us here tonight to make this introduction, but I know he's thrilled at what is transpiring here tonight. Dr. Shi's career, among many, many other things, has been superb, and it has been about bridges. His work is that of bridges, the nano bridges that he's developed to transport thermoelectric energy through complex and important new materials. And his life, too, has been one of bridges. One from east to west, which he traversed from his native China to his life in America. And bridges from academia to industry and then back to academia. And bridges of collaboration that he's built with his fellow researchers. For he knows that collaboration is the way that science advances. He is a scientist of the absolute first order. As you saw in the video, a dedicated and great teacher of the next generation of sciences. And I am so proud to call him a member of the faculty and a colleague at the University of Texas at Austin. Doctor, I want to thank you for your brilliance, for your restless energy, and for bringing your career to Texas and to our campus. Dr. Shi, congratulations.
Thank you. And thank you, President Powers, for the very nice introduction. I would first like to thank Mr. and Mrs. O'Donnell for creating this award for young researchers. So there are many outstanding young researchers in the room and in Texas who have made important contributions to their field. And I believe it's a very difficult job for the selection committee. I'm honored that the selection committee give this honor to my research area. As I say earlier in my presentation, my students and my colleagues who work in this field, they are as thrilled as me when they heard this award. So again, UT is a big school. Everything's big in Texas, right? It gives me opportunities to find outstanding collaborators in different areas and build out research programs. So, for example, in the graphene research area, I've been working with Professor Zhang Yao in physics, Professor Ruoff in materials. For this new program in thermal energy storage, I established a new collaboration with Professor Chris Belowski in chemistry. I think he's somewhere in the room. I don't know where he's sitting. But I look forward to interesting results with these new collaborations. And for thermoelectric energy conversion, I have been lucky to work closely with Professor Goodenough and Professor Zhou in our department. And appreciate Professor Goodenough take time from his busy schedule to prepare the nomination package. He and Professor Jack Howell in our department have been great mentors for me, and they are really my role model. There are many other colleagues I need to acknowledge, but I don't think I have the time. But I do want to acknowledge the students have worked with. Again, they are really what we are here for. So we are both teachers and scholars, right? Especially at UT. I have been lucky to work with outstanding students. For example, my first PhD students, who is now I think associate professor in Texas A&M. So UT Austin and do get along sometimes. Okay, and many of my later students also become professors or interviewing for faculty jobs. They are really great to work with. Okay, lastly, my wife cannot be here tonight because she had to take care of my two daughters. But I want to thank her for her support over the years. Thank you.
So, David Russell nominated the award winner in science. And I had the pleasure of serving on a subcommittee for the Science Award, so it's particularly gratifying to know how important the work is that Dr. Zhang, Xiaoxing Zhang, did that gave him this award.
Good evening. It's my honor to introduce a talented scientist, structural biologist, X-ray crystallographer, membrane protein expert, ion channel cognoscente, professor, Howard Hughes Medical Institute investigator, mentor, teacher, husband, father, man, living, breathing collection of tissues, cells, molecules, atoms, subatomic particles, and the 2013 Edith and Peter O'Donnell Awardee in Science. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Yuxing Zhang.
Wow. What an introduction. And I did, well, last night I said I prepared my talk. I also prepared a small piece of paper just to prepare for the acknowledgement, make sure after drink some wines, I don't talk something silly. Okay, so David Russell actually did everything in secrecy, and I was kept in dark until Dr. Brinkley called me and said, "You got this award." Yeah, so everything is just a big surprise. And of course, it's a great honor to receive this award, and I would thank Mr. and Mrs. O'Donnell for their, and also other sponsors for their generosity. And of course, I would like to thank those committee members to select me to be the recipient of this year's TAMEST this award for O'Donnell Award in Science, and of course, David Russell, and also my chairman for the nomination. Without that, of course, I won't get it. Of course, this award is not just for me. It's a recognition for all the hardworking people in my lab, and I'm very grateful for their sort of outstanding achievement of all these colleagues. And of course, I sort of being in UT Southwestern, I have to say I made a right decision, and this whole institute and the department is being very supportive. And without those support, of course, I won't get to this current stage. And also, I would like to acknowledge a couple of people which played a sort of important role for my early career development. My PhD advisor, Paul Sigler,
He's a very well-known structural biologist, but unfortunately he died of a heart attack in 2000. And also Ron McKinnon, my postdoc mentor, and working in his lab, actually I learned a great deal of how to think about science. Not just do experiment, but think about science. I think that's a very important sort of aspect of being a great scientist. And of course, I want to thank the chairman of my department for all the support he provided. And finally, but not least, I want to thank my family members, particularly my wife. You know, married to a scientist can be tough. And she worked hard to make sure everything is fine at home. And make me sort of worry-free and being very supportive. And thanks, and thank you. Thanks.
Here to present the award for technology innovation is Sarah Hartwine, who is president of ExxonMobil Upstream Corporation. She's going to tell us about the work of Mr. Medlock.
I guess I just got a promotion. I'm actually president of the Upstream Research Company. That's about all I can handle. So it is a great honor for me to introduce my colleague, Dr. Tim Nedwed, tonight. Tim has led ExxonMobil's oil spill research response research program for 8 years now, and he is a recognized expert in oil spill response. His innovative research has been instrumental in furthering our entire industry's capabilities for responding to offshore oil spills. I'd like to point out that Tim got his Bachelor of Science degree in chemical engineering from the University of Kansas, but then we were fortunate that he decided to come to Texas to get his master's and doctorate degrees in environmental engineering from the University of Houston, where he graduated at the top of his class. He's a registered professional engineer in the state of Texas, and he's lived and worked here for more than 25 years, 14 of which have been for ExxonMobil's Upstream Research Company. When ExxonMobil and others in the industry were asked for support following the Deepwater Horizon incident in 2010, Tim was specifically called upon because of his widely recognized expertise with response technologies. During the incident, he identified an opportunity to use a subsea dispersant injection concept that was developed through his research. The technique was effectively deployed at the source of the leak and ultimately credited with keeping much of the escaping oil from washing up on shore. As a testimony to the success of his subsea injection method, the concept has now been incorporated into spill response plans all around the world. Already, this technique has significantly enhanced the industry's response capability for potential offshore incidents. And thus, Tim's innovation has played a critical role in changing our industry and how it's equipped to deal or to operate offshore. Tim's traveled the world to advocate and educate his peers, scientists, and regulators on cutting-edge technology, and all the while maintaining a world-renowned research program back here in Texas. His research continues, and it continues to generate new response tools that could significantly enhance industry's ability to respond to oil spills in a variety of environments, as you've heard, including the Arctic. For those of you who have known or worked with Tim, it comes as no surprise that his uncanny creativity and research acumen have gone beyond developing solutions in oil spill response. Over the years, many of his colleagues have invited him to join project teams outside his area of expertise, and his creativity has generated numerous ideas that hold promise for other areas of our business, including drilling, ice management, and safety. Tim Nedwed is a true innovator. He sees things differently. He envisions possibilities, and he makes connections where no connections existed before. His research is critical to our industry's continued success, and it's resulted in significant benefits for the environment. He has a passion for his work that is unparalleled, And this is of particular note, given that Tim's objective, ExxonMobil's objective, and our industry's objective is that we never have to use the products of his research. Today, it gives me great pride to introduce Dr. Tim Nedwed as the recipient of this prestigious Edith and Peter O'Donnell Award for Technology Innovation. Tim.
Well, I want to start my remarks by telling you the best thing about winning this award, and that's that it impressed my kids. And I have 3 children. The oldest is 10, and the youngest is 5. And it used to be that I could impress them by telling them I was a doctor. In fact, when they were younger, they're still young, but when they were younger, they used to come to me every time they had a scrape or a cut. Now, they say, "I'm not a real doctor," and they go straight for their mom. So with this award, my daughter came to me and said, she saw this video, she said, "I want to send that video to my teachers at school." So that was great praise from her. So maybe it's not so bad to not be a real doctor after all. First off, I want to thank ExxonMobil for putting and keeping me in a position that allows me to do something that I really enjoy. I get to come into my office every day and think of new and better ways to help the environment by researching oil spill response technologies. And sometimes it's really especially rewarding when some of my ideas actually work and get widespread application. I want to personally thank Sarah Ortwine for having the confidence to nominate me for this award. If it wasn't for her, I wouldn't have impressed my kids. I want to thank Edith and Peter O'Donnell and the other supporters of the O'Donnell Award. I want to thank the Academy and the awards nomination committee. It was really an honor to speak with such a prestigious group of people last year, and it was really even more of an honor when they actually selected me for the Technology Innovation Award. I want to thank my colleagues at ExxonMobil, many of them who took the time to come up here for this conference. Finally, I want to thank my family, especially my wife, who's here tonight, for her support. Sometimes it's not easy working or having to deal with somebody like me. She has, we have 3 kids, but sometimes I think she thinks she has 4 kids. When I look back at this award in a few years, it will truly represent a major milestone and highlight in my career. But thank you, and thank the Academy.
So let's give a round of applause for all of the Peter O'Donnell Music Award. So,
well, congratulations to all of the 2013 awardees. You join a very distinguished group of O'Donnell Award recipients. Your accomplishments and your promise for the contributions you'll make in the future bring honor to your institutions, to the O'Donnells, and to the state of Texas. Thank you also, Dr. Curl and the other members of the selection committee for your efforts in bringing attention to these outstanding young scientists. Before we conclude, I do want to once again recognize some very special individuals. Senator Hutchinson, for all that she has done in inspiring and encouraging the formation of TAMEST and leading us to the robust organization that it is today. And most especially, Edith and Peter O'Donnell, for all that you have done for this organization, for this community, for this state, in ways that have touched everybody in this room and well beyond. Thank you for making this all possible. This concludes our program. Please join us for a dessert reception in the San Antonio foyer, and look forward to seeing you at tomorrow morning's program.